Yo, what is up everyone? Tachi here. So the game is going to release in about 24 hours or less, so it's about time I actually make and release the reroll guide. But before I get into that, I need to bring up a disclaimer. Obviously, I'm making the guide before the game comes out. They did say that they were going to create a reroll button that will make rerolling more convenient, but we don't actually know where it's going to be. So in the video, I'm not going to be using this method because in JP they don't have that. Instead, we are going to go with the more traditional way, which is just to close out the game, go into app data, delete the data, and then just reopen the game and continue rerolling that way. But in the off chance that they do have the button immediately after the actual items popping up and whatnot, if you can just straight up just hit a button that says reroll or try again or whatever it is, right after that, before the download, obviously use that instead. But if it's after that, if it's after you select a name, after you download and after the tutorial, if you have to go into the settings of the game to do that, then definitely use this method instead because this one would still be faster. Either way, onto the guide. So let's get onto the actual guide part. Now, like I said in the disclaimer, depending on where they put the actual reroll button is going to depend on whether or not you want to use that method or this method. That's pretty much just what it is. Now, as you can see, pretty much immediately after opening the game, you have a small download. I think it's around 40 megabytes or so it's quite small. And then immediately after this, you get into the pools. And here's the 11 roll. Just pull down the rope. And you can see gold books are the S or SS weapons. And if this puppet on the right hits the puppet on the left, which did not happen this time, you would get an extra book, which would actually replace one of these bronze ones. Now you see this is a job, Little Mermaid, SS. So this time I only got one SS. So what you do here, just close out the game. I know this is going to look a little weird. Have it on an overlay so it looks kind of funky. Go to the game, storage, clear data, and then just open up the game again. And this is probably the fastest way to reroll, depending on where they actually put the reroll button. I'm going to tell you where the reroll button would have to be for it to be a better option than just outright downloading the 40 megabytes. Now, obviously, of course, if you are on data, not on Wi-Fi, or you have a data cap at home, I would probably suggest to use their method, even though it might take longer depending on where the actual button is. Now, when it comes to what you should reroll for, the answer is pretty basic. Like I explained in my fact, there's actually a couple of things you should keep in mind. The gist of it really is that you want to roll for two of the exact same type of weapon. And when I say type of weapon, I mean, like, for example, you want 2 or more SS axes, or you want 2 or more SS swords, and you want at least 1 or 2 of those. Well, basically you want most or all of them to be jobs. That is the part that makes the rerolling a little bit harder because not all SS weapons are jobs. So other than that, at the very least, I want to say that if you do reroll, try to focus to get all of them to be the exact same type of damage at the very least. Like, for example, if you had 2 rolls, if you had one that was 2 SS weapons, one of them was a physical weapon like an axe, and the other one was a magical weapon like an orb, and then you had another roll where it was an axe and a sword, I would say the axe and a sword is a better reroll. Although obviously in my scenario, I would just keep rerolling because I would not want either of those rolls. And then obviously aside from that, this is the cream of the crop reroll is just reroll for a nightmare. But I will say ahead of time that your chance of getting a nightmare is quite small. I believe the rate is maybe 0.2 or 0.3, something like that. It's quite low. And you see she actually hit the other puppet there, so there goes my free extra roll. Ooh, Snow White. Baby Jesus. Oh my god. There goes another job. And they're both books. And there goes another job. So you see in this case, for example, here, so this is a staff. This is a magical weapon. And then this is a book, which is also a magical weapon. So in this scenario, this is a pretty decent reroll. right? Because it was 3 jobs and all 3 of them are magic weapons, and more than that, 2 of them are the same exact type of weapon. So this is 2 books. This is actually perfect. And in terms of where the reroll button would have to be for it to be smarter to use their method, it would have to be immediately after opening all the books. So pretty much like right here, or perhaps on this next screen. But remember, on the next screen is where you actually input your name. You're going to see it's going to pop up. It's going to say like contract. And this is where you put your name. On the note of this, your name is not unique, at least as far as I can tell, because I've re-rolled several accounts now with the name Tachi and it hasn't stopped me. But do keep in mind that there is an 8 character maximum. So unfortunately for me, I cannot roll with the name Tachibana, sadly. I'm like 1 or 2 characters off. I don't feel like counting the exact amount of letters. Other than that, if the button is after this, so if it's inside of like the setting menu, like in other games where it's like a delete button, then it's just faster to use the data deletion button. In my case, I'm using LD player, so it's kind of like BlueStacks. It has like a little button on the top, almost like tabs in Chrome, and you could just close out the game and go back into settings really quick instead of having to press the app switching button. For the most part, that's what you want to reroll for. It's pretty basic. It's just a matter of how much time do you want to spend on rerolling. Now, like I said in the FAQ, and like some JP players will say, rerolling is only going to give you a little bit of an advantage in the early game, because more or less, like as you progress in the game, the weapons are eventually going to be phased out. But that being said, especially now that we know for sure that Colosseum will be out on day 2, I do think that it's a big enough advantage in the early game to have multiple jobs and multiple weapons that it's especially more worth it, right? Because I can understand it from the perspective of the Japanese players, because Japanese players didn't have Colosseum when they started the game, right? That came out like, I don't even remember how long afterwards, right? Like weeks or months after. So that makes more sense on their perspective. But since we are getting Colo, even if it is a trial Colo, which to me sounds like a preseason, but we're not sure if that's the case. To me, it makes sense to want any advantage that you can get in that, because obviously the higher your rank in Colosseum, the more rewards you get. And the more rewards you get, the more waifus you can pull. So regardless of what anyone says, I would say that rerolling is definitely worth it. Assuming, of course, you happen to have time. And that's basically just how rerolling in general works, right? You're trading time for an advantage, even if the advantage is momentary. So yeah, for sure, you definitely want to get as many SS weapons as possible. So let's see what I get this time. There goes another job for Snow White, and that is the Archer class. A male character. Yeah, a lot of these characters, I believe the only male character going to be released in Global on day 1 is Pinocchio. But I mean, I don't know if you would consider him a male character or a female character. I don't think I ever got that far in the story to remember. So if it's a male character, it's a trap. So some people are going to be into that. If that's your thing, good for you, but not mine. So I'm going to stick to waifus. Pretty much either way though, that is the end of this video. Hopefully you guys found it informative. If you did, feel free to share the video around. Obviously, it really helps not just myself, but obviously the people who watch the video, because now they know what they should roll for. And other than that, on the day that the game comes out, I'm not exactly sure what time the game is going to come out, but if it comes out in the morning on July the 1st, I will try to stream my rerolling. So keep in mind, maybe check back to the channel or subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you can actually see it, because I'm going to be honest, YouTube is not that great at notifying people when videos come out, let alone streams. So anyhow, I'm out. Have a nice day.